no desire.
Hey guys, so in the rest of this video, you're gonna hear me reference the previous video like it's the first part of this video. Just gonna let you guys know real quick, the original intention or original idea I had was I was gonna start the original video like the way the whole video went, and then the second half would be like the full review of the book. But I decided to change it up and decided to make it two different videos. So again, if you hear that kind of verbiage in there, just know that that was the original idea, was it was going to be all one video. But knowing how I'm a smaller YouTuber and not a lot of people are going to want to watch a 50+ minute video from a smaller YouTuber, with that being said though, thought it would be better to split them into two videos. Don't regret it. So anyway, enjoy my full review of this fucking book. Hey guys, so this is the second part of the video. Sorry to interject that nice little read you were enjoying, but time to talk about the book in its entirety now that I've read and listened to the whole book. To give some background on what I mean by that is I read up to a certain point in the book before I literally wanted to throw it through my window and say, fuck this shit, I'm done. But I was able to control myself, not throw it through the window, and I decided I'll just listen to the audiobook. And that didn't cost me any money because on Audible I have a bunch of like these little credit things that you get if you're on like Amazon Prime for a certain amount of time, blah, blah, blah. I used one of those, so basically it cost me nothing to get the audiobook on top of this. So I listened to the rest of the story. Oh boy, where to begin? So I saw a meme when I first was sharing this around on one of the Discords I'm a part of, and one of the people who was kind of sort of defending this book to me shared essentially a meme, and it'll be on screen here. What everyone thought Warhammer Adventures would be. Mary Sue kids and Ultramarines killing Necrons. What had actually happened is Necrons destroy the planet and Imperial Guards in hours. Slaughter the Ultramarines, the kids spend the entire book running from the Necron deathmark, and never actually manage to kill a single Necron. And one main character dies, all in the first book. Now, if you do paint the book's events in this broad stroke, it does sound like a faithful 40k story. It does sound like a grimdark, if you paint it in broad strokes. But if you're honest about how all of that is written and how all of that is handled, in reality, it's actually still a bastardization of 40k and of the concepts and setting that it takes place in. The major problem with this novel, if you will, is all of those events are handled the worst way possible. And yes, before people yell at me and go, it's a kid's book, obviously they can't go into full detail. The problem is again, the book fights against its own setting throughout. 40k, if anything, this book only proves one thing to me. You can't write a faithful 40k book and still make it a kid-friendly story. You can't do it. This book proved that to me. That's the one thing I'm happy about the fact that I bought this book, is that it proved to me without a shadow of a doubt what I always knew, which is this universe cannot be made into a children's book. And this is more or less a parody of that very attempt or idea. It failed miserably. But let's go through the points that this little meme kind of makes. And again, it paints it in this broad stroke, giving a very false impression of the book's events. First off, it says Necrons destroy the planet. True. Everything this meme says is, broadly speaking, true. But it gives the wrong impression. The Necrons do destroy the planet, and it is described in the book, but it's described in less than 2 sentences. More or less, at the end of a chapter, it says, oh, a planet blew up, or the planet they were on just blew up. But what do they do after the book to explore the characters' reactions to this? Nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean nothing. The characters' thoughts and minds aren't probed through this. These kids aren't given an opportunity to express like, oh my god, I just watched an entire planet be destroyed. All the people who weren't able to make it to the escape ships just got eviscerated. They got evaporated into the mist of the planet's destruction. That's not explored in any way, shape, or form. In fact, shortly after the planet's destroyed and the brief reaction is described in like a sentence, it immediately goes to the main character this young girl named Zelia worrying about her mom, and then she gets a communique via her friend Meki, who, by the way, that name is so shitty because if it wasn't clear from the name, the kid is from Mars and is part of the Mechanicum. Let the shittiness of the name Meki stick in your head. Because that's not even the worst possible. Believe it or not, Meki's one of the least stupid characters in this entire book. They get a Meki does some like screw around with some mechanics and then creates basically a radio where they're able to contact Zelia's mother. And at that point, it's almost like the planet being destroyed is not necessarily forgotten, but it's shrugged off. There's no exploration about how the characters react to it. In fact, there's no reaction to it. And when we see another character in like a sickening state of mind, like he's scared, he's shaky, he's sick, this being Talon, they don't do any kind of exploration because the reason he's all shaky and scared, you would think would be, oh, the planet's been destroyed, so they're about to go into these kids' thoughts and opinions and feelings about this planet that they were just on being destroyed. And the reason he's shaky and scared is he's space sick.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
You heard that right. The reason he's scared is he's space sick. That's it. That's the whole picture right there painted for you. You're welcome. If you were wondering if they were going to actually go down that path of actually exploring any kind of emotional depth, no. The planet being destroyed was treated as if, I don't know, like somebody dropped a literal like bouncy ball and it fell through a crack somewhere and oh well, it's forgotten. That's really how it felt. There was no exploration of what happened or the reaction of it. These kids, now you could argue that these kids' lack of reaction is grimdark in itself, that something like this happening isn't completely out of the realm of possibility in their minds and that they were almost prepared for it. But the problem is again, they needed to write something in there to make that come across, but nothing is written to give that impression. Nothing. It's just they just walk away from the planet being destroyed the next chapter like it's nothing. And again, a character is shaky, scared, and feeling ill, not because a planet was just blown up, but because he's space sick. And the thing is that the main character Zelia is so concerned about him, but she herself has no reaction to the planet blowing up. After she found out her mother made it off, it's like, oh, planet blew up. Oh well. That's it? And if it weren't for that, almost every other character doesn't seem to really have a reaction. I'm totally confused. But to cover the next point, not to stick on that one for too much longer, okay, move on from the planet being destroyed. What about the Imperial Guardsmen being killed? Well, there's really, again, nothing really of substance done there either. There's a scene described in the book as people are evacuating the planet and as our titular characters are trying to run away. The character Talon, he was part of a street gang. We'll get into that more later. But he was part of a street gang, and when they went to the surface, because the plan for this gang was to basically hide out underground until the invasion was over, or until it was fought off, but that didn't work out because the planet blew up. But all that happened was he went to the surface with his rival in the gang, and there's stuff going on there, and then they watch as a couple Imperial Guardsmen come around a corner, and they get vaporized. The problem is the book, again, didn't take any time to really allow any impact to this event, this act. And I get it, it's a kid's book, they don't want to scare the kiddies, but if this is 40K, you cannot just have these events occur, but then not explore them. That's an insult to the kids. And I don't care how much advanced grammar you fit into the book, which, to give the one credit I'll give to this fucking fold of paper, it's got good grammar. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. But that's it. That's about the only thing I can praise about it is it's not treating kids like idiots in terms of the grammar department, but that doesn't make up for what the combination of words are. And it's really not a 40k book at the end of the day, but the point is, when these Imperial Guardsmen are vaporized, it's not even really described as a murder. It's just described as, oh, they were vaporized, and that the character was shocked. But that's it. Like, again, the character of Talon just immediately just calms down from it. Hell, when he gets his rival stuck out from under rubble and he's running away, he gets vaporized. He gets killed. And there's no reaction for that either. In fact, Talon just picks up his weapon and is like, oh, mine now, and keeps running. But there's no reaction to this other kid, essentially, that he was a rival of, that he didn't like. But even then, they knew each other. They lived with each other. There's no reaction to his death, let alone the Imperial Guardsmen. The closest to emotion they explore in that moment is that Talon has which, by the way, part of his backstory is utter shit, but again, we'll get to it later. But his father and his brother are Imperial Guardsmen, and he briefly goes, well, what if my dad and brother are fighting them? Oh well. Like, he just runs off. Like, it's not really explored. It's just shrugged off like a single, like, mentioning, like, that's enough. But even kids are, listen, for the kids old enough to be able to understand the grammar aspects of this, I'd say that the demographic for this book is between the ages of, and this is just my opinion, I don't know what it's actually intended for, like if they say it anywhere, but I'd say the age range is between 9 and 13. That's the sweet spot. And this book is an utter insult to anybody older than 12. Once we get to the actual, like, depth they go to with exploring emotion, exploring descriptive imagery, they just completely hold back at every moment and again spit on the very idea of what 40k is as a universe. It's this dark, grim universe, and its strengths are played when you go into detail about the horrors, the nightmarish imagery, the scary events. And yes, there is a way to do that for kids. Goosebumps was a major franchise of books for a reason, for kids. It explored scary ideas. And yes, it did do it in quote-unquote kid-friendly ways, but it still brought in dark imagery, still brought in dark concepts and ideas and thought processes that kids could eventually get into. It was a nice adrenaline rush for kids. I don't even get a remote feeling of that from this book. Now, if this book had been more akin to a Goosebumps 40k, I would have loved it, especially if it was a short story where where the lack of detail and the lack of depth had an excuse. But it's a full-length book, and look how it's written. The font is gigantic. Look at that. That is huge-ass font. Like, each letter is roughly the same size as the tip of my pinky. This is like size 18-24 font. So if you lower the size of the text and you get rid of these fancy pictures they have everywhere, which, by the way, what a fancy photo that is, right? A couple of lines and like, that looks like a doodle on somebody's. I swear I've seen a doodle like that in a notebook I had to share with some kid in high school. Like, that looks like a doodle. So if you get rid of the doodles and you get rid of if you lower the text size, this book would probably be, I don't know, like that maybe? No, I'd say no, closer to that. But it's just arbitrarily dragged down and inflated to look like a chapter book from a distance, like that thick. But in reality, again, it's just an inflated book.
Oh my God, who the hell cares?
But anyway, back on the topic of the story. So yeah, they don't do any in-depth exploration of any of the planet being destroyed or the Imperial Guardsmen. Okay, fine. Well, what about the slaughter of the Ultramarines? I mean, this meme gives the impression, oh, they're slaughtered right there. No, it's implied. That's it. I mean, all we see of the Ultramarines is their initial drop pod landing, and then them fighting the Necron, and then the initial fight with the Necrons. Which, by the way, I'll get to explaining why I stopped reading the book, because that does relate to the Ultramarines' arrival. But we see the Ultramarines one time, the Ultramarines arrive and are explored for a page or two. An Astartes drop pod of Ultramarines drops in. They come in, and they fight. But there's one thing that happens before they fight that made me want to toss the book. We'll get to that. So the slaughter of the Ultramarines, we don't see it. It's not described in the book. It's not given any kind of length of detail. So, slaughter. The kids spend the entire book running from the Necron death mark and never actually manage to kill a single Necron. That is true. There is no point where these kids get an upper hand on any Necron and put one down. I wouldn't believe it for half a second if they did try that. I think if the author had attempted that, it would have been disgusting. And I think they knew that. I think the one thing the author did use his brain cells for when trying to connect this story, he knew that the one shark he couldn't jump was the idea that these characters were able to bring down a Necron. Even one. I wouldn't even believe them to be able to take down one of those scarab crawler ones. Fuck that. I wouldn't believe that for half a second. And I'm pretty sure the author couldn't either. He wrote himself into a corner by making these shitty characters. So, and then the last thing on this meme we'll address is, and one main character dies. The one main character, again, this meme is so misleading. The main character in question isn't even on the cover. Granted, two main characters are not on the cover. But the main character that this meme is referring to is the only adult in the book. The only adult that's consistently in the whole book. And that's the archaeologist that was working alongside Zelia's mother. And the whole book, he's completely useless. He doesn't do anything. His name is Erasmus, and throughout the book, he's pretty much a coward. Because when we first meet him, we find that he's responsible for leaving the Scriptor, which is the ship that Zelia and her mother and Meki and this archaeologist Erasmus live on. He left the entrance to the ship open, and that's how Talon and his gang snuck in to steal stuff and ambush Zelia. And the only reason and the thing is, again, how they handle that whole situation is very un-40k. Like all these big gangbangers who all happen to, thankfully, be younger kids, don't do any harm to her because, before they get the chance to try and hurt her, Talon scares them off and, like, attacks one of his competitor for the gang, and it's a bunch of dumb shit. But they get off, but that whole thing only happened because this character was so eager to get to the dig site that he left the ship door open, essentially. Just that's so dumb. But the fact that Zelia and these gangbanger kids, no one was hurt. Tell me, is any of that come off as 40k? No, it fucking doesn't. No, it fucking does not. But anyway, this main character does die. But he didn't do anything. The thing is, there's even a chapter. Let me double check the name of it. Hold up. So, chapter 10, Taking the Lead. So in chapter 10, essentially what occurs is Erasmus is useless. He's not helping the kids, stop fighting each other because Talon and Meki get, butt heads. They don't get along. And Erasmus basically says, oh, they're old enough to handle their own problems. And he just sits in a corner of their escape pod, grasping his satchel, holding it close, and he's just in a depression. You could say that that's, the one thing that they do to explore the idea of, somebody, depressed and sad and afraid after having seen a planet be destroyed. But this is the one adult in the situation. And he's not doing anything. He's afraid, he's scared, and he just sits by and basically I don't even know why they had him survive with how useless he was. Oh, so he could sacrifice himself at the end? Great. What point did that serve? I mean, really, his death was kind of pointless, and I called it early on, because I already was told a main character died via this meme. And the thing is, it gives the impression that Erasmus died, admirably, and he was just disintegrated. But the thing is, his death wasn't even done in any kind of detail. He was killed in an avalanche. So the thing is, I'm sensing that it's quite possible he didn't even die. Again, this whole meme is so misleading. We don't even know if he's dead. They could pull the standard kid story bullshit of, oh, this main character we did have you kinda sorta get to know? Well, yeah, well, because you got to know him, we're not gonna have him die. That's how it comes off. So I don't even know for a fact he's dead. I'm sensing that standard, like, oh, you thought he was dead, but you didn't see him actually die now, did you? That's what I get for a vibe at that end, and it's... Again, this meme is so misleading. But to get off the meme, let's talk about the biggest issues. And I know everything I've said up to this point, a lot of people are going, what you've said so far isn't the biggest issues? No.
Oh my god! Stop!
First of all, let's cover the main cast of characters here throughout the whole book. You got Zelia, who's the main character on the front of the book. You know, you see her right there. That's her. That's Talon, Valen, whatever the fuck his name is. I honestly do not care enough about him to give a shit. And that's Meki, the admin tech. And past them for main characters, you have, I guess, Erasmus counts because he's a named character, but again, he's completely useless pretty much for the rest of the fucking book. He doesn't do anything. He cowers in fear, and the kids have to take charge of themselves while he's a pussy in the corner afraid to do anything. And then because of cheap, shitty writing that even kids will find insulting, because his character arc was, oh, he was afraid, he was a coward, but now he saved them because he's truly an admirable character. It's such... Thing is, there are entire TV shows where that kind of story arc is done well. Where they take the time to develop a cowardice character, and then they give that build-up. Because the thing is, it's a stereotypical archetype of, oh, the coward sacrifices himself and ends up being the biggest hero of them all. And it's such a stereotypical archetype that it has to be done in a good way. Here, it's not done well. It's short, it's brief, and it's snappy. It's like, oh, he's a coward here, he saved them here. And it felt like a blink of the eye. It's like, I saw that coming. And I didn't see any build-up. There was no character development for me to believe that he suddenly went from coward to hero of the day. I didn't see that path. Did anybody? Please? Can anyone explain to me how Erasmus had that death earned? It was pathetic. They should have waited a couple books to cover that kind of thing. Hell, actually, strike that. Don't make any more books of this shit. Please, don't. You're insulting the kids, you're insulting the fans of 40K, and you're clearly going down a path of shittery. Kids aren't gonna buy your models. I will if you stop being a shitty company, GW. I will. So will everybody else. Get off politics. Stop trying to take 40K down the wrong path like a kids franchise, and just make the fucking models and shut up. But anyway, like I said, main characters: Zelia, Talon, Meki. Then you have Erasmus, who's kind of sort of a main character. He's less so. He's more or less just the adult who happens to be there for the plot device of saving the kids at the end. For some reason. Don't ask me. I don't know. I still can't explain how the fuck that went down. And then you have... You're not going to believe me. You're straight up not, and I cannot blame you. I gotta show you the picture of the character. But there is an animal sidekick. Okay, it's a 40K book, it's a kid's book, I get it. But it's a 40K book at the same time. There is an animal sidekick. Now, granted, is this animal sidekick as ridiculous as Scooby-Doo? No, it's a useful creature. There's a lot of problems, though. A lot of them. That is the animal sidekick of the story. Fliegenpala. Sorry, I had to look for that. Fliegenpala. Yeah, I'll just say Fleabit. Fleabit is a monkey who's really smart. apparently. He can't speak to the characters, so they don't know he's smart, other than they know he's smart with mechanics because he shows them he can build shit. But when we get his inner monologue during a whole chapter, he talks about how he's been enslaved by humans for hundreds of years, and he's got a shock collar around his neck, and how humans are so inferior to him, and he thinks they're a vile species, but then he's helping these kids and the coward adults survive. You could have killed them all and done what you needed to do without them. Why are you helping them? Like, again, his inner monologue is, I've been enslaved, humans are a plague on the universe. Why the fuck are you helping these kids survive then? It makes no sense. And again, this is 40K. That would have been a good dark twist. Again, I get it's a kid's book, they weren't going to try that dark twist, but still, it would have been a good one. Like, hey, this monkey kills all the kids. But the other problem is this monkey is not just a monkey. He's like an alien Xenos species. Apparently. Or he is an ape. I'm very confused with how they describe him. He's very intelligent from his own inner monologue, so I get the idea he's a Xenos. But if he's a Xenos, why the fuck are they... Why the fuck are they even tolerating him? He's a Xeno. Even Imperial citizens don't treat them well. But they're like all friendly with him, more or less, from the get-go. Except for Talon, who got attacked by him. Likewise, he attacked him, so it's more or less his fault. But the thing is, believe it or not, the pet sidekick is not even my biggest problem with the book. It's really not. My biggest problem over the whole thing. But before I cover my biggest problem, here's my second biggest problem. The part that got me to want to toss the book through my window was there was a part where the Ultramarines drop pod crash land on the planet Targian, the planet that the book starts out on, where the original archaeological dig, with the planet that blows up. Yeah, by the way, this whole sequence is so run-of-the-mill standard, it's pathetic. But essentially, the vehicle that they all traveled to the dig site in towards the beginning of the book again, when the invasion of the Necrons was just starting, and a wave of those little scarab bot things are coming for them, and conveniently their vehicle's not working. You can imagine this in any cartoon. So the vehicle's not working. They're like, oh, and Meki's trying to repair it. He's trying to repair it real quick. And they're like, Meki, you better repair it real quick. And the scarabs are coming. And then all of a sudden, boom, between them and the scarabs, a drop pod lands. The drop pod lands, pops out Ultramarines. Now, standard Ultramarine, or any Space Marine chapter, would have charged into battle. That would have been the end of it. But what happens that made me want to toss the fucking book across the fucking planet was that one Ultramarine hopped out of the pod and saw them in their ship and turned to them and told them to get out of there. Now, to anybody who's uninitiated to this hobby, who doesn't know jack shit about the lore, you're like, oh, well, that's kind of a dumb thing to want to throw the book across the room for. If these were salamanders, I wouldn't have a problem with it. It would be in character for them. For literally every other chapter of Adeptus Astartes throughout this entire franchise, every other chapter, humans are more or less inconsequential. Yes, they claim that they're there to save and fight for humanity, but the reality, and one of the darker realities, and again, that contributes to the grimdark atmosphere of the universe, has always been that the Space Marines, ironically, don't actually give a shit about humans. It's more about killing the enemy than it is about defending humanity. That aspect of it, they couldn't give two shits less about. Most Space Marines live their entire lives watching countless humans die, and it's inconsequential. It's a means to an end. Humans are nothing. All that matters is the Emperor. All that matters is the destruction of the Emperor's enemies, and that includes the Xenos races and the ruinous powers. That's all they care about, is killing their enemies. They don't give two shits about humans. If it meant sending in wave after wave of Imperial Guard to slaughter even one potential force of orcs or Chaos Marines or what have you, they would send every single Imperial Guardsman against that hazardous doomsday wave. And even if it meant all of them died in the process and it killed that one enemy, they would fucking do it. Though Space Marines would actually fight that themselves. They would much prefer that. But my point still being is, they don't give a shit about human lives. They pretend to, but fundamentally they don't. The only chapter that does is Salamanders. And, again, I don't know why they didn't have the Salamanders land. I think that would have been this would have been a good opportunity to, because the thing is, if you're gonna make a kid's book, why the fuck did you use the Ultramarines? The chapter, listen, I have my gripes with a lot of different chapters, but the one chapter you should have used for a kid-friendly 40k book, which in itself makes me want to vomit, just saying that terminology, but if you're gonna do it as close to as possible as you can with the setting. I get it. The Ultramarines, the Ultra Smurfs are your fucking poster boys. But it doesn't make fucking sense for an Ultramarine to turn his back to the enemy. The reason he's on that planet is to kill them, not save humans. That has always been the Astartes methodology and mentality. Fuck humanity, it's about killing the enemies. Not about saving lives, it's about ending lives. They don't give a shit. But Salamanders do. So if Salamanders had crash landed on that pod, I would believe with every fiber of my being, not only would one turn to warn them to get away, but one of them would have even gone and escorted them to the starport to get them to escape in the void ships. I would have thought that would have been a perfect opportunity to mix in a Space Marine with the main events. But again, because of GW's fucking obsession with Ultramarines, for some goddamn reason, they had one of them turn their back to an enemy, which is not what an Ultramarine would do, or any Astartes other than a Salamander. Look at civilians, 5 meaningless humans, and warn them to run. 5 humans, Necron force. What's the likelihood these humans are gonna die anyway? That you need. Listen, an Astartes mentality would be, if they're not smart enough to run on their own, they're dead anyway. I'm not gonna waste the energy. But one of them took time to turn, tell them to run, and then enter combat. That is not at all advisable by their own teachings. It's ridiculous, and it made me want to toss the book across the room. After that, I had to listen to David Tennant fucking read this book, because at least with his voice, I never wanted to toss the fucking phone across the room. But by God, I still, to this day, like, processing that whole scene pisses me off. To the umpteenth degree. But now we've reached, though, my biggest problem with the entire book. My biggest fucking issue. And that's with the character of Talon. Again, I don't even know if that's really his name. Hold up, I think it's in the margins. Yep, Talon. Okay. So my biggest problem is with this character. Because he encompasses all of the bad decisions and the lack of understanding. He encompasses all the problems. I believe. Not the fucking pet sidekick. Not the Mechanicus insulting dumbass nickname Mechie character. Not Zelia. Not even Erasmus. And not the fucking rest of the plot points. Everything is summed up in this stupid kid's completely. But to give you an idea why I hate this kid, let me address this part. I bookmarked this. So, this involves Talon. The Lexa mechanic beamed at the ganger, Talon, as if Talon were his favorite pupil. Exactly. This is Erasmus talking to Talon. Exactly. Until then, the Emperor will protect us. Talon says, yeah, Talon sighed sarcastically, because he's doing such a great job so far. Shh, Mechie hissed, someone will hear. And Talon says, so? Question mark. The Martian looked appalled. To speak against the Emperor is heresy. He is our lord and protector. Talon says, yeah, well, I bet he's never had to crawl through a sewer to escape an ambush. 3 years I survived beneath the hive, and no one protected me. I had to look after myself. I don't even know if I need to describe the rest of what's wrong with this fucking character. Because here's the thing. Here's why that whole moment encompasses basically the whole problems with this book. The author, Kevin Scott, you don't know jack shit about this universe if you wrote that in. And I get it, oh, it's for kids though. I don't give a shit. Listen, you could have still you could have written this horrible book without that moment. Because anyone with half a brain above the age of 3 in this universe knows that you do not, if you have a problem with the Emperor, if you have lost faith, you'd never speak it out loud. Because that is a death sentence. Not even necessarily from the ecclesiarchal forces. Not even necessarily from the Imperial Guard or Adeptus Astartes. Civilians have killed for less in this universe and will kill for less in the 41st millennium. To speak ill of the Emperor is heresy into the upteenth degree. And they shrug it off as in... they mention it's heresy, but they do not give any impact to what that means in this universe. Heresy is part of the core of this universe and how people react to it. The religious zealotry is one of the fundamental connections and fundamental strings that ties many different stories and plot lines and characters and events together. It's one of the core reasons the universe fell apart to begin with. And you do not even bother to basically understand that, to even attempt to imply that to the audience who will read this book. And you cannot use the fucking excuse that, oh, it's for kids. Fuck you. But the rest of what's wrong with Talon's character, he's the son of an Imperial Guardsman. His older brother became an Imperial Guardsman. He ran away because his dad wanted him to be an Imperial Guardsman. That's it. And they try and play it off as like, oh, well, Dad never sugarcoated the universe for me. He told me how it was. You kidding me? I was raised by a man who did that for me, and I thanked him every fucking day for it. I'm gonna run away because he's telling me the truth. Who has that fucking mentality? Book, non-fiction, fiction, I don't give a shit. Who lives like that? All in all, that's Warhammer's Adventures for you. And believe it or not, there's a part 2. And I looked it up. There's 4 or 5 parts, apparently. First book was Necrons. Next book is Gene Stealers. There was one about Tau. Another about Eldar. I can't wait till we get to the Orc book. Can't wait till we get to the Drukhari. What about Chaos Forces? I'm curious. Apparently, they're planning a Nurgle book. I don't know if that was someone shitting with me or not during a live stream, but we'll see. All in all, I've read Warhammer's Adventures all the way through. And it's shit. It's about as much shit as you can imagine. Honestly. Thanks, GW. You insulted kids with this, and you insulted your longtime fans with this, and you're honestly planning on making more of these. That's the sad part to me. That's the sad part to me. Anyway, my biggest problem with this book is everything you heard here, and it's also the other major thing that makes me pissed that this book even exists, the wider implications. That they're dumbing down a hobby we all love and care for, and they don't give two rats' ass about it. If I ever needed a kick in the butt to work even harder on the grimdark I'm working on, this was it. This was it. See you guys.